Let me ask you something. If one side has more dead civilians, does that automatically make them morally correct? Because that's exactly how much of the world is judging war today. Count the dead, compare the numbers, declare the villain. It feels compassionate. It feels objective. It even feels morally clear. But it's dangerously misleading. We've reduced war to arithmetic. Who has more bodies? Who has the bigger number? That must be the aggressor. But that logic, as emotionally powerful as it feels, is what I like to call the body count fallacy. The belief that moral responsibility in war can be determined simply by comparing death toll. It sounds rational, it sounds humane, it sounds scientific, but numbers document tragedy. They do not assign responsibility. And that distinction matters. Civilian casualty hits us viscerally. They should. Every number represents a human life. But numbers alone don't tell who started the war. They don't tell us what each side was trying to achieve. They don't tell us what steps were taken or not taken to protect civilians. They tell you what happened. They do not tell you why. Wars are not judged by outcomes. They are judged by decisions, intent, strategy, conduct, what each side values, what each side is willing to risk, and what each side is willing to protect. In the war between Israel and Hamas, global debate has increasingly centered on casualty disparity. Since October the 7th, 2023, the deadliest attack on Jews since the Holocaust, the conversation has shifted away from how the war began and towards one thing: the widening gap in death. For many observers, the numbers have become the argument. But slow down. One side builds bomb shelters, the other side builds tunnels beneath apartment buildings. One side invests in missile defense systems to intercept rockets aimed at civilians. The other side embeds rocket launchers inside civilian neighborhoods. One side issues evacuation warnings, leaflets, phone calls, text messages. The other side systematically erases the boundary between the fighters and the civilians. Those approaches are not morally equivalent, and casualty charts cannot erase the difference. If a country suffers fewer civilian deaths because it invested heavily in protecting its population, that does not make it the aggressor. Preparedness is not a proof of guilt, and vulnerability is not proof of virtue. That line is critical. Let's test this logic historically. If casualty numbers alone determined moral guilt, then World War II becomes morally confusing. Millions of German civilians died. Far more German civilians died than British or American civilians. So, by body count logic, was Nazi Germany morally superior? Of course not, because we understand something deeper. One side pursued expansion and extermination, the other fought to defeat it. Intent mattered, objective mattered, conduct mattered, numbers alone did not. And here's why the body count fallacy becomes dangerous. If wars are judged primarily by casualty caps, you create a perverse incentive. You reward the side that exposes its civilians to danger. You reward the side that embeds military assets in schools and hospitals. You reward the side that blurs the line between combatant and non-combatant. Because the higher civilian death toll, the stronger the moral narrative becomes. That is not moral clarity. That is moral distortion. It encourages the very tactics that put civilians at great risk. War is always tragic. Civilian suffering is always tragic. But moral judgment demands more than a scoreboard of the dead. It demands a harder question. Who initiated the conflict? What are the stated objectives? What steps are being taken to minimize civilian harm? What strategic reality exists? What alternatives were available? Those questions require nuance. They resist viral simplicity, but they are morally serious. Reducing war to body count does not create clarity. It creates illusion. It mistakes vulnerability for virtue. It confuses preparedness with aggression. It replaces moral reasoning with emotional arithmetic. If we judge wars by numbers alone, we are not being morally serious. we are surrendering moral reasoning with the simplicity of a headline. And if our moral framework ends up rewarding the side that protects its civilian the least, then we are not encouraging peace. We are encouraging more dead civilians. And that should disturb each and every one of you.